Okay, this video I'm making here today is for a customer that's having a bit of a problem with the way the thread's travelling through the machine mostly, and we're going to go over a couple of steps that can be tried to see if it alleviates the problem. This is the CB6900, or in some places it's a 1341. Okay, so we're going to go through threading procedure first. We'll do two threading procedures. One that I expect is the way that they normally suggest that you set the machine up. That's what we'll do first, and that's where the problem's happening. Okay, I'll just pass this over to Martin to film me as I go through the threading procedure. Now, the first thing I'll just draw attention to is that with your thread cone and the way the machine's set up, it's always best to get the cones of the threads and the stand set up as low as possible on the machine, and to get this up quite high. So that can be done when you set it up. Now the next thing is, in the standard sort of setup, one thing I'll point out here is that this thread has a fair twist about it. It plays up a bit in the machine, and so it's a good one to show how to fix the problem. Normal thing is coming in through the top there, come over a couple of holes and down. Now following that, we come through here, that little hole before the first tensioner. Now I always recommend to run this tension here quite light, so that it's not putting much pressure on the thread to start with. Okay, come down through there, up that one, so make sure it's getting in between the discs as you go. It's always best to use two hands. If you can hop back a bit, Martin, and show when you're doing this, it helps. You'll see in here at the moment also a little bit of twisting, how it's all wobbly. You have to make sure that that thread goes between the tension discs as you go. Up and over the next lot of tension discs. Now this bit here is pretty important. You come down through the slot, the gap in there, and when you best hold it, if you hop back a bit, get that whole thing, hold the thread so that when you pull it, it clicks into place. I don't know if you heard that, but if you come in a bit closer when I do that bit again, I'll just pull it out of that spot if possible, without pulling everything out. Not as easy as you'd expect. You don't normally unwind it from this part. Okay, now if you just listen, you should hear a definite click when it goes into place. Right, pull up and pull up firmly. It's not clicked yet. Right, it clicked then. So now I should be able to get that spring to rise up fairly easily. In this case here, I broke the original stand on there because I couldn't get it to load up as easily as what I just did then, so I've replaced it with a piece of wire. Once we get through that part, you go through the thread take-up lever, down through there, that first part. Now we've got to come down, in this case through there, under this spring setup. You can lift it out a bit if it helps to get it in under, down through here, in through here, which can, might have to, it's clocked up with a little bit of gunk. Right, okay, and now through the needle, always on this machine from the left side of the needle to right. And one important point for beginners is to make sure that if you can pick up on that, the hollowed out section of the needle there always goes on the side of the bobbin. That's for the hook of the bobbin to be able to, or shuttle case, to pick up the thread when it's doing its stitching. Okay, we'll do a little bit of stitching here, and what I want to focus on is to show what happens with the thread as the take-up lever goes up and down. So I'll just put I have to sit down to doing this bit. Okay, should be able to just get the feet into action like that. Alright, we'll get started, make sure we're off to a good start. Now if we follow this thread action, and I'll just do it very slowly to start with, you can see how the thread, mostly it plays up on this side as a rule as the thread goes along after a while. I'll get a little bit out of the way and then we'll go along steadily. You'll see there's quite a bit of thread action happening there, and sometimes with the thread, when it twists up, it can get caught up around some of these things here. In this case, I have adjusted the thread return spring down to its maximum opening capability in order to get rid of as much thread as possible, and I found that there's no problem with running it at its full length of travel. Okay, in some jobs you may want to drop it off if it's a really light duty job. The tension of that spring can be adjusted simply by undoing this bolt here and turning it. If you turn it to the right, I think the spring will become a softer setting. If you turn it to the left, it'll tighten the spring up tighter. Where I've got it suitable for my job, so basically that's just a hint to help. If you find that the thread return spring's not being positive enough, you can just tighten it up by undoing that and tightening it. The action's not going as bad as I expected in this case here, but you can see quite a lot of slack there. Now the other optional thing that I want to show here at the moment, will show how to adjust the stopping part where the thread return spring comes into operation. Now, a good practice with almost any machines with the thread turn spring is that when the needle comes down to touch the job and enters the job, this spring, as a general rule, would stop travelling at around about that point. Okay, in this case that looks to be about where I've got it. Yeah, I think. I wasn't expecting that. Must be the thickness of this particular bit of leather. Grab it thin a bit. Okay, unless I've inadvertently adjusted it. Right, comes down to the job, stops moving, so that's a guideline anyway most of the time. I found with this machine you can have it come a bit further and it doesn't really matter. Now to adjust that, underneath here, if you can get under and see that screw, Martin, you just undo this screw here, right, and that plate now can move further or closer to the thread return spring. First thing I've got to do is see where that spring's coming all the way down there now. Right, that's maximum travel, so I had it closed up a little bit before, so now it's at about maximum travel, and that's one way of being able to keep some of this thread from getting in the way. So we'll try that now and see what difference we're sitting on. Okay, now you'll see there the needle's touching the job, but the thread return spring, when I keep going, keeps taking up further and further slack. So the needle's going a good 3 or 4 millimetre into the job before the travel stops. So we'll just try that now and see what we get. Whoops. Mess that up. Okay, if you can just show what's happening here at the moment. It's not too bad. But one other improvement that I found can help when you've got thread, if you can see up that thread there, Martin, from the angle, so that it shows up how it's all wobbly. Okay, the threading can be improved and behave better. We'll pull that out. Reload it, and this time we'll do something a little bit different. Not as I show it. We're coming from underneath this time. What this does a little bit of is it counteracts the twist in the thread, so that when it comes further along, it's putting a different tension on it. So coming up from the bottom, I then come up, second hole along, from underneath and up, and then back down through this hole. Now when I put it through, I will not get as much twisting. The thread in this case, if anybody's interested, is a 20 thread, and I think I'm using a 19 or 20 needle. Looks like a fair size needle. Okay, now we'll try and focus, if you can get from around this side, Martin, where it shows up pretty well, the action there. Just cut the threads off that. Okay, in and under. Make sure when you start off always that you're holding it quite tight, otherwise you'll get bird's nest down underneath. Okay, now what you should see here is that the thread is no longer coming back this way so much. If anything, it'll be throwing a little bit more to the right, where it doesn't get tangled up on anything so much. So I'll go very slowly as I can. Do some by hand. Okay, and we'll go a little bit faster. Now, just while we're at it, we'll touch on a bit of reverse. Now, as good as you are going in reverse, You see that I haven't managed to go exactly in the right spots as I've gone back, but it's doing a reasonable job underneath. Tip I recommend when it comes to doing reverse is do it that way so you can see where the holes are. That's where that's possible, okay, and you get a better looking stitch. Other than that, another one that I often do myself because we do a lot of crocodile work is at the end of the stitch line I'll actually lift the foot, look for the hole, and I'll pierce the hole. It actually does a better job when you're feeling the needle down into the hole and you're more certain of getting it exactly where you want it in relation to where the hole in the previous thread is. Okay, so that's just another. No, I didn't actually do too well there, but either way you can get a fairly decent effect. That's it. Thanks for watching.